Who's ready to ruffle some feathers? I know I am, as we're talking about the most overrated Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. What do I mean by that? Well, I'd say we're going to talk about Pokemon that are maybe a little too popular, or perhaps just aren't deserving of any of the hype people might be giving it. This isn't an attack on these Pokemon at all, and I'm not calling them bad or anything like that either. It's just that they're so severely in the spotlight amongst fans, or are too highly rated just because of some gimmick behind them. This one is very much my opinion, so do me a favor and spare me the pitchforks. But also, be sure to let me know what you think about my selections at the end of the video. Some of them might shock you, but other than that, let's get started. The list today will open up as a 4-way tie between all the new evolutions we were given in Paldea to previously existing Pokemon. I'll come right out and say it, it's super cool to get Pokemon like these again. While there were some in Hisui, this is the first time a new generation introduced some evolutions right off the bat since pretty much Sylveon in the 6th gen. When it comes to Dunsparce, Kingambit, Annihilape, and Farigiraf, they're very cool Pokemon. You guys know I mostly like them all, especially the Giraffe Boy. But come on now. Kingambit is a solid Pokemon, and Annihilape really can be one of the best. But Farigiraf and Dunsparce aren't exactly rocking the meta. I feel like I need to remind you folks that I'm not trying to say that Pokemon on this list are bad. Just perhaps the popularity they've garnered is making them seem like too big of deals. It does seem to me like these 4 are going to forever be among the most popular in these games simply because we've been starving for these kinds of evolutions. But aside from Annihilape, perhaps we should dial it back a little bit. The next Pokemon we've got here is Baxcalibur, which I want to preface things by saying it is a pretty solid Pokemon between its ability Thermal Exchange and that 145 base attack stat. For one, they gave this thing a signature move, as well that is honestly one of the worst we've seen in a long time. It's called Glaive Rush, and it's got a base power of 120. That may sound like a nice Dragon-type move, one as strong as Outrage that doesn't end up confusing you, but the next turn, any move your opponent goes for can't miss, and will deal double damage. That's just horrible, and a strike against Baxcalibur for sure. But still, it's got such a high attack, and its pull still does have Outrage, Icicle Crash, and 2 or 3 coverage moves. I'd have probably given it a new Ice signature move instead of something like Glaive Rush, but whatever. I do think Baxcalibur can be a good Pokemon for some people in a playthrough, and I'm sure it has merit in competitive one way or the other. But I don't think it's only got popularity due to one really high attack stat and being a pseudo. So I'm sorry for you big time Dragon type fans. I guess that wasn't the only dragon I'd be talking about today, since the next entry on the list is Cyclizar. Look, I know, it's not like we have to ride Cyclizar all the time. We have Miraidon and Koraidon for that, so shouldn't they be here instead? Well, my answer to you is I am exempting them from this list because they're the cover legendaries, and it's hard to really talk about them being overrated one way or the other. So focusing back on Cyclizar, it's a Pokemon that, in competitive, is actually very popular. It's a bit speedy at base 121, and its move Shed Tail is such a popular option of combining U-turn and Substitute. Well, I have something to say. While the Regenerator ability is great for Cyclizar and the usage of Shed Tail, I think Orthworm actually might be the better user of that move. I know I said a little differently in my top 10 strongest video, and the point still stands that Regenerator does make the move more viable. However, for the sake of actually making sure that Substitute stands, wouldn't you rather have Orthworm's 145 base defense taking a quick hit and then switching in a Pokemon that actually gets to keep a Substitute? It's a little hard when it's being broken as soon as the new Pokemon enters the battlefield. So yeah, maybe, just maybe, even I have overrated Cyclizar a little bit. Though that doesn't change the fact that it's still pretty good. Next up, I guess I have to address a few things. Now look, I personally love Gardevoir a whole lot. Like, it's easily one of my top Pokemon, and one that I love putting on best teams. It is very good for playthroughs. That can't be denied. It's just too useful as an attacker, and just being able to slap Energy Ball and Thunderbolt on this thing completely eliminates a true need to use a Grass type or an Electric type. When you can viably cover 4 different offensive typings with one Pokemon, it's hard to say that it doesn't belong in the discussion as a top option for anything. I called it the best Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, and I put it on the best team. But maybe you guys are right to really be sick of seeing Guardy constantly. It is a bit overrated in the same way Charizard is. It's everywhere. I'll admit, in that regard, it's sort of become overrated. There are Pokemon that can do what Gardevoir does, and certain things even better. It's not the best Pokemon every time and for every situation, just for most. So maybe I could learn to stop leaning on it so often. But I still maintain that you can quite literally never go wrong with it. I hope this appeased some of you Guardy hating folks though. We'll close out the first half of our list here with an interesting one, Cetitan. I have seen a lot of people putting this thing over as Arceus' new gift to Ice-type Pokemon. I'm not sure I'm really seeing it though. I understand the usage of Belly Drum, especially on a Pokemon with base 170 HP, don't get me wrong. The Slush Rush ability is also nice. It begins with 73 base speed that ends up being doubled. You can't hate on that, but like, is it really gonna see major success if there isn't snow involved? I think we're gonna see a resurgence of teams running weather more than ever this generation. And I'm not entirely confident Cetitan will always be able to get the most out of its massive bulk and Slush Rush ability. In doubles, I can't imagine it's going to hold up as much as it looks on the surface. I'm putting Cetitan here because I just don't buy into its hype at all yet. But that could of course change down the line. But I guess that wouldn't change it from being a bit too overrated. We're gonna open up the top 5 with all the treasures of Ruin as one big group of Pokemon. Look, I get it guys. These are pretty cool. I like them. I think it was an interesting way to get the legendaries in there while providing the classic hide and seek elements that open world games love with the stakes. These dark types are all relatively solid Pokemon, especially Chien-Pao and Chi-Yu. They're good Pokemon with interesting stats and abilities, but I think their whole concept is a little overrated. Sure, the idea of finding those stakes and capturing these legendaries is pretty cool, especially when you go through the history classes at the Academy, which I definitely have. But like, I don't know if these things deserve the sort of love they're getting. Well, most of them anyway. I guess perhaps this snail Wo-Chien isn't exactly overrated, but the concept of these treasures of Ruin are. Sorry if I offended any fans, but while I think these guys look cool, it just seems like there's too much hype around them at this point. So, the next two Pokemon are Toedscruel and Wugtrio, our Convergent evolution Pokemon that act as non-regional variants of Dugtrio and Tentacruel. Wugtrio, as we all know, is an awful Pokemon, which is super unfortunate because Wiglet's pretty awesome and cute. But as for Toedscruel, I recently went over that it can be one of the worst Pokemon in competitive because of its ability. I know a lot of you clapped back at that by bringing up how it could end up causing status elements on Goldango, but even then, it's still not great. I think a lot of people like these Pokemon in their pre-evos because of the idea of convergent evolutions making their way to Pokemon, but they're not particularly good, and the novelty wears off when you realize that. Though I do hope Game Freak makes more Pokemon like this in the future. The idea of convergent evos is definitely anything but overrated. We're gonna start the top 3 process here with a Pokemon that is super overrated due to its typing, Scovillain. I think people have been begging for a fire grass type for an incredibly long time, especially one based on a hot pepper, and Scovillain fits that bill. It's been a long time coming that we see a Pokemon of this typing, so I understand the excitement, but it definitely could have been better. I mean, don't get me wrong, this guy's a good attacker, and its speed, while not amazing, could have been worse. They really did it dirty moves-wise though. There is very little coverage on this thing, meaning you may as well just lean into only its stab and nothing else, unless you're changing its typing and running Terra Blast. Its Spicy Extract signature move can be very interesting, and I don't particularly care too much about it one way or another. I could see myself including this on a best team due to wanting the grass and fire types represented with some strong moves. But aside from this, I think we should have gotten better with our first fire grass type, and that doesn't fit the bill. It's indeed a fair bit overrated. Here in our penultimate spot, we have Armorogue and Ceruledge. Don't get me wrong here, these are good Pokemon. I will say that right off the bat. I actually like them both, especially Ceruledge and its cool coloring and animations with its attack. But a lot of people are acting like these two are some of the best designed Pokemon we've ever gotten. And they really changed the game and whatnot, and I don't know. Like I said, I like them, but I feel like these two are gonna go the way of Lucario. They'll be popular forever, and eventually, much like you guys feel about Gardevoir whenever I bring it up, I can think people will get just as sick of these two as well. They're two humanoid Pokemon that are fire types with a secondary typing of either Psychic or Ghost. They almost feel like they were made to be popular and featured in the anime, and on ultra rare cards in the TCG, and on merch for many years to come. I can sort of see the writing on the wall here that spells out these two are going to overstay their welcome for a lot of people within the next few years. Finally, we've reached the most overrated Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. And I know I'm gonna gather up a lot of hate for this one. Just know that I'm prepared for it. Be kind, okay? I love Tinkaton. You love Tinkaton. The whole internet loves Tinkaton. There is a never-ending fountain of memes, GIFs, GIFs, and discourse that just goes on and on about this little pink friend and its hammer. I think we all might need to relax though. There are some people who think this is the best Pokemon in the generation. There are some who call it a return to form for Game Freak in the design department. And while that's all well and good to feel, I think it's a bit extreme. It might be funny that it attacks Corviknight for laughs and that its hammer is so comically oversized, but as a Pokemon, the best thing Tinkaton has going for it is its typing and speed. It needs to utilize Swords Dance to get the most out of its attack stat, and its very strong Steel-type move basically has a cooldown to using it. So from a competitive standpoint, it's not even able to really come through as a big name. I just think with everything I've seen on the internet, in my comment sections, and for my own self-reflection on how much I enjoy Tinkaton, perhaps we've overrated it a bit too much. Though I don't care because I still love it, and I know you all love it too. And just because it's the most overrated doesn't mean we don't keep overrating it anyway. So all hail our adorable hammer-wielding overlord. Alright folks, that's it for my controversial list today. This was a fun one to do because I was able to shoot out on some Pokemon. And hopefully you guys didn't get too offended at what I have to say or get too liberal with that dislike button. I guess though, now that I've talked about some overrated Pokemon, I'll definitely have to talk about the underrated folks. I'll say that for next week though. For now, thanks for watching, and let me know what Pokemon you think are the most overrated. Thanks for watching the video and for coming through and enjoying Scarlet and Violet with me. We've got so much content coming surrounding Gen 9 through the end of the year and beyond, including the top 10 strongest Pokemon, the best team for the games, and much more. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and Mystic Umbreon Shorts YouTube channel. When we get to 5,000 subs on the channel, we're going to have a new series related to Scarlet and Violet that will be exclusive to there, so go subscribe. Also, if you're into fanfictions or Genshin Impact, check out Mystic Reads and Tevotchnary. I offer a ton of creative spoken word content over there, and I do a bunch of theories and lore videos surrounding Genshin Impact. So come join me over there at that floats your boat. That's all for now. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time for more Scarlet and Violet content.